Welcome to Facing the Nation for January 12th, 2024. Of course, it's always a privilege being here with you. And as customary, once the program gets started, I will remind you to call up a neighbor, call up a friend, tell them Facing the Nation is on. You can follow us on all our Facebook platforms, the People's National Congress Reform page on Facebook, the People's National Congress Reform YouTube, and of course the APNUFC page on Facebook, and on our channel 6, of course. So call up somebody, tell them Facing the Nation is on. Today's program is going to be a very good one. We have a very special guest with us today, and we're going to talk about a lot of the issues that are pending. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest for today. He's none other than the leader of the People's National Congress Reform and the leader of the opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton.
Well, Happy New Year to all those who I haven't addressed before. But and so thanks for having me on the program, and I'm here to just engage.
Well, there is a lot happening. There is a lot to talk about, and the time usually runs out. So today I wouldn't dilly-daddle on any issues. We'll go straight into it. You started out by wishing us a Happy New Year. And, as this year has started, you would have had your New Year's message. And Guyanese are expectant of a lot of things this year. Persons are looking into what's going to happen with the general and regional elections. Whether it maybe this year, maybe next year, we're hearing some talks about it being announced for November of 2025. What should your supporters and Guyanese in the whole expect, firstly, from the PNCR in this year, and then the opposition as a collective?
Let me start by saying, don't be carried away by Barrage Act saying the 25th of that November next year.
Mm-hmm.
It is true under the law that elections must be held exactly 5 years and no longer than 3 months after the swearing in of the government. The government was sworn in on the 2nd of August, 2020, and therefore it can go until November 2025. But Barrage Agnew is known for deceit. He's known for all the maneuvering. And so what I would say to the Guyanese is that we are preparing for elections at the earliest possible time. We have done the work based on the registration, etc., to know when it could be called. And our work will be focused on preparing for that.
Okay.
These elections are critical. One of the things that has been done is the cutting the budget of, my understanding is that they're cutting the budget of Chicom. There can be two things. One, that they don't want biometrics and a clean voters list, so they're not putting money fit. We'll continue to agitate for that. It could also mean they're seeking to lull you into complacency, and then they, as is normal, they come with some supplementary
budget
paper, and they get the money. So what I would say at this stage is that all Guyanese should be prepared for election whenever they come. And that can be this year, it can be next year. Our focus in this election has to be a number of things. One, we have to focus on groundwork. While PR will help, while social media will help, you have to be on the ground. You have to know the voters, engage the voters, so that on election day you're on top of it and can avoid any eventuality. It has to focus on training of our people to monitor the election, scrutinize it, and ensure everything goes well. They also is need for training. We begin training our scrutineers, etc., so that they can scrutinize the process. That is critical. We have the process of identifying candidates has begun. As leader, I've been talking with people who I think can bring professional and other forms of competence to the list. Some of them have already agreed that at the right time we can release their names, etc. So one of the things I can say is that you will see a lot of new young professional faces combined with what we have. So that also is critical, and we are going to continue that process. But most importantly, we have to project ourselves as the next government, which we have been doing. I think in the Ghana-Venezuela territorial controversy, we were in the forefront of saying what should be done, how it should be done, and we rely on the professional competence of ex-foreign service officers, etc. And therefore we were on top of it and could have given guidance and information even to the government. So we believe that there's this view that the president has to be a specialist, every minister has to be a specialist. It's just a wrong view. What is needed is a president and ministers who can rely on professional, competent people to advise, and then they make the decision based on advice. That is what is needed, and we have set up already a number of groups, economics, etc., that are doing the work and will inform us. We believe that is critical. Very important is our messaging, which we have started a while now. And our message is a simple message that life is worse off under the PPP. That Ghana is in crisis, and that we need to organize ourselves to take Ghana out of crisis, win the next election, and give leadership to our people. Our focus, we have said, is a people-centered development strategy. We have expressed the concern that what has been happening in Guyana with oil resources is that the PPP elite, that small group, their friends, families, and favorites, they are the people that are benefiting from this windfall that we're having. And that could never serve the interests of the people of Ghana. And therefore, as a government in waiting, what we intend to do is to change that paradigm and to bring into fruition a number of projects that will allow our people to benefit and to improve their life. The most important thing is quality of life.
Yes.
As you move around, you will see buildings going up, etc. Yes, that might be true. A small group, again, is going to benefit from that. But real development occurs when you ensure there is human resource development. You know, I was listening, I don't agree with it, the 10 countries with their highest GDP or something like that, in which Ghana was number 10. What I found most interesting about that is that every time you spoke about these countries, except Ghana and some other one I don't remember, one common characteristic runs true. That is high quality education, high quality human resource. And we are saying that we are going to produce a society in which the human being, the people are the focus of development. And a lot of the resources will go into improving the quality of life of our people. You can have the best bridges, and I'm not saying we have the best bridges here because public works here is a mess.
Yeah.
But I'm saying let's assume that you could have the best bridges, the best roads. If you do not have the human resource capability to do what you want to do, then you wouldn't develop. I made a point at a press conference recently of us not developing the capacity to audit and monitor oil production. And that is a clear case of a human resource deficiency apart from the lack of political will by those who purport to run Guyana. Now, there are many areas of development that we have to focus on to make Guyana what we want it to be. I've said on many occasions, there's little or no sense about talking about all of these infrastructure, etc. They are needed. But if you have a society in which about 11,000 children every year, they do not matriculate, meaning get the 5 CXC with math and English, you're already in trouble. And then there's no structured program to ensure that those who are not academic get the kind of development that they need. And so a significant focus has to be on human resource development. That is critical. We have to focus on the development of our youth. We have made it very, very clear that we will put the resources into the University of Guyana to ensure that the University of Guyana develop the kind of persons we need. But beyond that, to do the research, to do the think tank work, to ensure that our policies are informed by proper research, etc. I recall years ago, Jack, they were saying, oh, IAST will become the best thing since sliced bread. Since that announcement, nothing has happened. And so a place like the Institute of Applied Science and Technology must be critical at this stage to the advancement of the non-oil sector. We have to put significant focus on advancing the non-oil sector if we're going to be sustainable past oil. And therefore, like I said, it is for this reason we have advocated people-centered development strategy in which we put the people first and develop the people and allow the people to cause our economic multitude to multiply.
All right. So Budget Day is Monday, January 15th. In your press conference yesterday, you talked a bit about that, but what are citizens more likely to expect coming from the government?
The same nonsense. I saw Barra Jack Day say no new taxes. Well, the nonsensical nature of that is that we are here without the taxes and people
Are still
punishing, they're still in poverty. So what is the significance of saying no new taxes? That the status quo will be maintained. The status quo really is poverty, high cost of living. So that announcement is as puerile as the speaker. Now, having said that, there are a number of things that should be in this budget. If you really want to improve the lives of ordinary people, I have no doubt that the PPP elite, their family, friends, and favorite life have improved, and they're buying the best of vehicles, the best of properties. My concern is the people. And if you're going to do that, I would hope that he announces that the tax threshold is pushed to 150,000 minimum. What that would mean is that all our people who are below 150,000 wouldn't have to pay income tax, and it will contribute to an increase in their disposable income. But I know that PPP, they're not going to do that. I believe that there should be an announcement of at least 50% wage increase. And even that wouldn't do, but it would help. Because if that is combined with your 150 tax threshold, then life would be better. But then if they do that without the other measures to ensure the increase in production, then they themselves might generate inflation. But the argument that these increases by themselves will increase inflation is not true. Inflation will increase if you do not take the measures to ensure increased production and productivity, so that there are goods and services for the new money, for the want of a better word, to absorb. So I would look in that direction. I would also like to see much better youth programs. The Minister of Youth, Sport and Culture is a sailor, and there seems to be no port at which he will land. There are no programs that are useful for the youth of this country. And there is no youth policy. They like to criticize the APNU, AFC, but we put in place a youth policy. They have none. The minister seems to believe that fixing ground is youth, sport, and culture. And even that is an overstatement. Anyhow, we leave that for another time. So I think there's need for more focus on our young people, getting them in business, teaching them about business, creating opportunities for them. And those are the kind of things I hope would be in the budget, but I know they cannot. You see, the problem the government has is that it is bent on corruption. It is bent on accumulating wealth for a few. And therefore, as a logical consequence of that, they cannot put the resources where they should be put. So I think there is very little that people can look forward to. The PPP's biggest program is their PR. They specialize in doing nothing but advertising that they're doing plenty. I'll give you a classic case. If you look at yesterday's paper, newspaper, Irfan Ali says hospitality school or whatever it is will begin shortly. Said that in last year's budget.
Yes.
And so you are dealing with people who are not serious. You're dealing with people who think they can do whatever they want to do and then use the PR machinery to make it look as if they are doing something. And I would submit that there isn't much people can expect from this budget. This budget is going to be a lot of the same. And I think people need to brace for that. I am 99.9% sure it would not have in it a proper poverty reduction program. And to the extent that there isn't a proper poverty reduction program, then all people are condemned to live in a state of poverty. And why I know they wouldn't be. And even if they put some things about it, they have not done the work among the poor to assess their needs, where they need to do the intervention. And so you might find the emergence of a category called poverty reduction. But when it comes to the efficacy, the ability to achieve their objectives, then you will see that it is just going to be on paper. The government has no intention of improving the quality of life of the Guyanese people. The government intention is, one, to instill fear. Two, to ensure that its people, meaning its elite, not the average Guyanese, get what they want. The elite enjoy their life driving around with sirens, etc. But when it comes to the interests of the people, There's none. And that is why we are advocating a people-centered development strategy. I see the president now
beginning to use that
people-centered.
term. Yes.
But it's a little too late. The world knows full well that we have been developing a strategy. We have put out a lot of information there. And then, look, it must be foolhardy for a president or a vice president to suggest you can't get free education at the university now, when in fact, when you look at the allocation of resources to the budget, you can almost immediately do it. 500 million from last year could have come from men on mission, because those men on no mission except stupidness.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything else
about them. So I can go through that budget and find $10 billion to put in education, higher education, meaning giving the university lecturers a quality salary, ensure we're developing the faculties with the resources they need, etc., and setting in place research and development initiatives. I think we can go to that budget and find the money last year and this year, because there's so many areas of waste in that budget. I sense they would have budgeted to finish this road through Prashad Nagar. A couple of billions could have come from that and gone to university education, because it's not going to finish this year. And if they use all the money that was allocated to complete it, then that tells something about their competence and their abilities. So, look, I think Guyana is in crisis. If you look at agriculture, the minister could talk about what levels of production he wants. Every bumper crop is in the newspaper, not in the field, because how do you have high levels of production of bora, cabbage, celery, and the price in the market is that high? So you know that he's just talking Bangladesh. Every bumper crop that he announced is in the newspaper. When you go to the field, there isn't that kind of production. And then you're not seeing, and let's assume we increase the production. You're not seeing them moving in the direction of creating and improving the manufacturing sector, so that whatever excess production, whenever you start producing, can add value, etc. So we're really in a quagmire, for the want of a better word.
I know the PPP and particularly JAGDEO, we were just talking about, they continue with the narrative that, all of the things that you are saying and the coalition is saying is quite unrealistic, even though everybody knows that we have these oil revenues, etc. What are your thoughts on that? What do you say to that?
Again, it is because they want only a certain section to get rich, they have to say that. I always raise the question, why is it unrealistic when you had free university education without oil and gas resources? So nothing unrealistic about that. There's nothing unrealistic about carrying the threshold to $150,000. There's nothing unrealistic about increasing the minimum wage of the government employees by 50%. They like to say we didn't do anything, but we increased it by more than 70% in 5 years without inflation. So Air Finale, I think, is at sea when it comes to economic development, etc. I sense that is why JAGDEO restrict how he speaks, because you do not see from him or hear from him somebody who is on top of the facts and can deal with it. And so Daddy JAGDEO has to be the person speaking. Now, I think that a lot of the things we are talking about are realistic. I cannot see why we cannot provide the children in the Pomeroon River with the required boats to take them to school. I cannot see why we can't, even in an incremental way, begin to put in place a national school transportation system to take our children to school. If your children aren't in school, you are affecting your development. You're affecting your development. And so it is critical not only to get our children in school, but for them to get the quality education that is needed to make them functional in the society. I don't think, again, the government has the will and the competence to do it. So whenever the president and Jack Leo talk, it's for PR purposes. It has nothing to do with the reality and trying to realize programs. They were told, I think the IMF did, the World Bank did, that a lot of the projects they were conceptualizing, they didn't have the institutional capacity to deliver on them. You're seeing it. Their incompetence is obvious. And so the things that are unrealistic are the projects that the government is putting up, way of the capacity of the public and the private sector to deliver in this country. If you make that realistic, if you bring public infrastructure in line with the capacity to deliver, while at the same time improving our capacity to deliver, you will get more done at a higher quality, and you'll be able to serve the Guyanese people. What is happening now is a minister up the phone and tells a nephew or a sister or brother, register a company under whatever name, and that person becomes a contractor. What that does right away is lower the quality of work and waste kind of money. And that is why those things are unrealistic for the PPP that we are talking about, because those things will contribute to genuine development, but they will not allow the PPP to have the slush fund. And if you go to the budget, all the budgets they have produced since they're back in government, one of the things you see throughout the budget, and I know they don't type it up, so they might be able to change it. But one of the things you see throughout the budget is procurement of furniture and equipment. The budget never ever says furniture for where, what equipment for where. So they are creating slush funds. Look, if you're going to have a proper budget, each project should have a proper project profile. What a government does is put 2 billion and say these are the 2 projects, but there's no project profile for any one of them. So you see that they have created the mechanism to steal. Any government that wants to ensure that the people could monitor the projects, could check the quality, will prepare proper project profiles so that citizens could say, okay, this road in the budget is this street in London.
And I can check.
I invite any Guyanese to go to the budget and see if they can detect where these roads will be built. It's just roads. Or building a road in Region 3, building a road in Region 5. You see, they have created an approach that ensures that they can make money based on corruption.
You talk about, the PPP loves this PR stunt. We had just last week the issue in Linden where the president went up to Linden and they had this big opening, signing of agreement to build a 4-lane bridge in Linden. And we talked about the fact that this was actually a coalition project, but here they are with a PR stunt. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think former Minister Patterson would have dealt with it well, pointing out that there were feasibility studies for both approaches, and really and truly it had nothing to do with the government. I think in my own presentations, I've made it very clear. The first presentation I made in London when I became leader, I pointed out that the government was attempting to stop those two projects. The
road.
Linden to Mogura Road, and they call it. And I think Patterson has also pointed out how incompetent they are and that they're going to create a bottleneck because they remove one of the bridges over the Upakari. But what that would mean, and Patterson stated it, I'm just repeating, you will travel to there and still have got to wait on a barge to cross the river. When it is a relatively narrow river that you can easily bridge, and once you would have bridged it's easy to go. Secondly, it will bring down the cost of things going to, rather than you having to be at that barge, wait on it till whatever time. If you meet, I think after 6 in the afternoon, you got to wait until the next day. All that kind of garbage. And so again, you see, they are not focusing on the interests of the people. Were they focusing on the interests of the people, that bridge would not have been removed because that will contribute significantly to improving the well-being of the people. And the fact that these projects were there since 2020 and they could only be now announcing them in 2023 is because they delayed them. It is also because they have been forced by constant reference to it and the British objection. They are now going to do the projects, and in their typical style, they will go on as if it was projects that were created by them. I don't know of any project that is created by them that have been successful. When they came to power in 1992, they had to build on what the PNC had. They didn't do a good job of it. Now they're back. They met programs and projects. They're fighting with them. But again, their incompetence will ensure that. And I want to draw attention to something that I think is going to return to haunt us. I'm no engineer. I've spoken with engineers. But they continue on the very low course to narrow the drains. If you see what they're trying to do in the embankment, there's a large drain.
And they're
chopping it and putting. When the rainfall starts, without proper drainage, adequate storing capacity for the water, they're going to flood near neighboring communities. And so, again, like I said in the press conference yesterday, they do not have a plan. I've always argued that they flick and hope they land on the foot, and many times they land on their head. And so it is marked incompetence. This government has not shown the ability to govern.
You talked just now about the embankment and what you're seeing there, the narrowing of the drain. But we also talked about the funds and how it's being used. One of the things that you're seeing there, it's at different points. You have this road work being done, then you skip a whole area and just empty spots. And the parts that are left there are actually places where they may not be able to widen because there are homes there, etc. And, it begs to wonder what they're doing if you continue doing that.
Look, I think it's just to put money in the hands of the PPP supporters. There is you have the main road, which is, what do you call it? You have the embankment, which you could have left. And there's a lot of space behind where roads can be placed. And open lands. But I think some of it too is vindictiveness. Because in the Plaisance area, all they talk about is who should move. But you hear they talk about who must move in the other areas.
Correct.
So it's vintage Jack deal. It's divisive in nature.
Right. You talked a little about the GCOM when we started, But one of the many issues that Guyanese are still, talking about and grappling with, the fact we're going with this list that in some cases is deemed to be an old list, and the purging has not been done. And Guyanese going through what they did in 2020, and we also saw issues even at the local government election last year. It's a real concern for persons what will be done. Despite we know the opposition is protesting every Tuesday in front of GCOM, and what will happen with that list if it's not purged?
Well, first of all,
Or how do you go around if you can share?
let us start by saying, if they continue the registration as it's going, shortly we'll have a list with more. The voters list will have more people than the
Population
population of the country. That in itself will raise more eyebrows. I do not think that the government wants a list that is credible. I believe the government wants to rig, and therefore they will do everything to ensure the conditions are propitious to rigging. But I think we will have to increase our activities as it relates to the call for a clean voters list and biometrics, and to engage the international community a little more on this issue. Because look, any society that claims to be promoting democracy cannot have a voters list that isn't a reflection of the electorate. And therefore you will be going to an election with a flawed list, and you are preparing the conditions to repeat the problems of 2020. And I think this case has to be made in a profound fashion, and then we can move on.
All right. So, pending the election going into government, once the coalition goes into government, the next election, what are some of the first things Guyanese can basically look forward to in such a government?
We did say regularly that we will overhaul the financial architecture. We have to ensure that we put a proper system in place for wage increases, and we can't use this system that the government has, in which the richer you are, you get more, and the poorer you are, you get less. That's one of the things we have to tackle very early. We have to have a very clear social policy program. Take something like public assistance. It is dependent on whether the minister wants to give you or not.
Yes.
We need objective criteria for public assistance. People must be able to know, okay, I'm disabled, or this is what it is, I am entitled. Or I got 10 children, I ain't got work, whatever. As it stands, public assistance has become a tool for political use rather than a mechanism to help those in need of help. We'll have to deal with that. Then there is the land question. You have to establish very early a proper land regulation unit to ensure that lands are regularized and remove the condition. The PPP leaves it like that because it's an opportunity for them to take away people land and do all kinds of things. We need to regularize lands, and we need to put in place the legal mechanisms to deal with ancestral lands. That is very, very critical. So I think land is a critical issue. We also have got to come up with an approach that allows the 25% that should go to small contractors to go to small contractors. And I think we have to reduce the concentration of contracts in the hands of a few. So we would need to, one, build capacity of our people to get contracts. And at the same time, reduce this centralization of resources in the hands of the few. In the indigenous communities, we have to improve their capacity to undertake contracts, it is, I don't want to say wrong, it is immoral, it is unacceptable for contracts in the hinterland to be given to people from the coastland. Not saying coastland people must not get, but you have to ensure that the people who live there can do contracts and earn so that money circulates in their community. The government is hell-bent on just keeping the indigenous community on handouts rather than putting things in place to empower the indigenous community, empower the African community, and to empower poor Indian communities. Because sometimes we talk like if the Indians are empowered.
Yeah.
When you visit those communities, you know they aren't. It's just a few that are having a nice time. And so those are some of the things that we have to look at the banking sector. I know we already have some proposals to deal with the banking sector. We'll deal with that at the right time. We have to look at the cooperative movement because the government seems to want to take away land from poor people, and that is going to be a battle, you know. So those are some of the things, but you also have got to expand manufacturing. And expanding manufacturing will demand a proper energy policy. So we have to work on that, a good combination of wind, solar, hydro, etc., so that you bring down your energy costs, allowing for the manufacturing of goods and services at a competitive price. Those are some of the things, but there are many more that we have to do. One of the things we had put in place, the proposals for doing the Linden to Kokwani road. Now, if that road is done, you will open a lot of opportunities. And so we have to relook the projects as they relate to public works. We should seek now to link the regions and to open lands as you link the various regions through highways. So those are some of the things. Key bridges, not any bridge, but key bridges that will open economic opportunities. I believe that when you open those lands, people will follow, especially if you incentivize them to follow.
So this, I think it was the 5th of this month, would have made 1 year since the government would have taken away the lands of persons in Mokka. And only yesterday, the president, in what is said to be none of the representatives in the area were informed of this visit until he
Plus,
got
he worked with the people who he
the usual
had in the picture. You know, one of the things people need to recognize, especially when the president and them are going to African Guyanese community,
they
walk with
entourage.
their entourage so that they look like they have a crowd.
Yes, they do.
So that needs to be made very clear. But let me say this about Mokka. We have to have in place, we put in place as a government, a system to undo the wrongs that were done by the government. One of them is the removal of the people in Mokka. I was driving up the road the other day, and I was checking the amount of
space.
No, not the space. The buildings that they're allowing, that is in line with those with Mokka. Right now they're building, they're fencing a big piece, and it is in the same pathway
as those
people in Mokka.
Yes,
so
correct.
you know that it is discriminatory in discrimination in practice. And so I think we'll have to put mechanisms in place to rectify those problems. And there are so many things that need to be rectified. One of the things that is affecting our people badly is the pomposity of PPP activists and persons. I was in the secret, but I'm going to deal with it separately. And a man was allowed to put his stone, his sand, and everything, trying to remember the name of the village, but I have it in my notes and I will deal with it separately. But this PPP man is allowed, and the dust blows on everybody. When they're doing the heavy duty work, they crack up an old woman's house. I went and see the house, I have the videos. So you also have to recognize that the PPP, when I was in Bush Lot on the quarantine, which was the same complaint that one man was
Allowed to
do all kinds of nonsense. The same is true when I was in West Coast Bobis. So we must note that the PPP has a lot of these persons around that are taking advantage of ordinary people in the community. And that will also need to be rectified in government.
So when he went there yesterday, he's now promising that he will do all the roads in that area. And I think he would have spoke to farm as well, because of course, even since the incident with the young lady who lost her children in that fire, where the fire reel was actually stuck down that road. But again, soon it will be 1 year since that incident as well. And now he's going into the area to talk about this. And I think sometimes we need to remind Guyanese, why is it they operate the way? And for me, I believe we're heading, like you said, maybe quicker to an election.
Let me make
It's
this
a
point.
stunt.
And this I will say to all Guyanese. A government can't consider building a road in a community an achievement now.
Correct.
There are the resources there to build roads in all the communities.
And it is the government's obligation.
Apart from the obligation, it is not imagination or intellect of the government. It's just the government taking the money that exists and doing roads. But what people in Mocha must observe, and what people in Buxton must observe, that they have done all the roads in PPP area before they turn to talk about other areas, and that is what is critical.
So true, so true.
But then, you don't have to worry. They just broke up the road themselves. Because they have no proper plan. If you go through Diamond, as they build road, the big trucks that carry anything blocking up the road and
Correct.
all across the country. So their incompetence will obviously act negatively against them.
We had only day before yesterday, I believe it was the overloaded truck, as they stated. The PR bridge that is being constructed was damaged. The temporary bridge that they put in place was damaged because of that. You have lots of these big trucks running all over the road as soon as the roads are finished, and they're damaged again. And again, I believe this is another way of them, recruiting money and stealing.
But sometimes I think this government doesn't think. I started talking about how much money to upgrade the Suze like Linden Highway. If you're building a 4-lane bridge coming from across the Demerara River, remember you said you're moving from 2 to 4. You are now going to put that on a 2-lane highway, or common sense should have dictated that you should now build, and I intend to repeat this in my budget speech, rather than talking about rehabilitating the Suze like Linden Highway, they need to build a parallel road, which will result in a situation where you can end up with a 4-lane highway. If you build a parallel road now, double lane, okay, to the side, you choose whichever one you want. You don't disrupt the existing road.
Sure.
You will build that road, okay? In building that road, you will have a new road of a high quality. Then you continue to use that one as a 2-lane and come over and fix this one, and then you have a 4-lane highway.
And then you may have a service road after that for your trucks.
Because you see, the people do not think. They have no vision, no imagination. I sometimes try to wonder which school Ejil went to. How do you come now to say you're going to rehabilitate this highway when you know full well you'd apply your mouth? The president advertising 4-lane bridge, but you go in and maintain a 2-lane highway. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So, and I will make reference to it in my budget presentation. I've already noted it, and I think it needs to be repeated because sometimes you could just believe they're stupid. One would thought that common sense would dictate. Why is it you're having 4-lane highway on the East Bank, but you want to maintain a 2-lane highway on the Suzaklinen highway? They're nonsense.
We're sharply running out of time. I wanted to touch on this. This is something I saw yesterday. Now, we know that the oil blocks were awarded to certain persons recently, coming down to the end of last year. And we are now seeing the vice president saying that he is giving those same awardees up to this month end to bring in their documents for due diligence. I'm a bit confused because I would have assumed that when you are going through, these documents should have been presented before you award.
But simply, in the normal incompetence of the government, they probably awarded them without due diligence.
Well, and this is them admitting.
Yeah, so look, I don't know why we keep focusing on Jack Dale. Jack Dale has not been known for thinking things through. Everything that Jack Dale touched in this country became a disaster. So I taken a conscious decision. If it is an intellectual debate, which he has no interest in, I would. But to be thinking over this chap, it's a waste of time. He knew full well why he announced what he announced. Then he announced them for PR purposes. And then you come back like a little stupid talking about due diligence. I think the nation is tired and fed up of him.
That is so true. There is, you're having a rally coming up, I believe, on January 20th. It is themed Rally Against the High Cost of Living. What would you like to share with the public in that regard before?
I would like to say to the public, you know that you're suffering from this high cost of living. We have to bring some pressure to bear, and I invite them to turn out, and we will talk with them about this high cost of living and what we do. It will come after the budget, so we will know what is in the budget and we'll be able to deal with it.
All right. And as we close off, we basically have about 2 minutes remaining. Is there anything that I may have left out, anything that you believe that, Guyanese need to hear at this time as, we move forward?
I think Guyanese need to recognize that our oil and gas resources are being mismanaged and that we are in danger of making the mistakes of many countries who went in the direction of wanton waste of their resources, and that there is need for a change of government in this country. The PPP has shown no indication that it intends to change. In fact, if you believe 1992 to 2015 was bad, 2020 to present is worse. And so I would think we all need to work. Yes, last night I met some young men in Guyhook, some in Sophia. I've been liming with them. And all of them are just talking about going out there and helping to ensure they get rid of this government. And I think the push has to be to get rid of this government. That's, I think, is what is needed.
Thank you so much. And I do agree with you. Every time I end this show, I remind Guyanese that they have a responsibility. It's not just the politicians who are out there talking, but we have a responsibility to hold the government accountable in every situation. And there are things that we as well must do to help our politicians. And in this regard as well, for those who have not been registered as yet, you have up to January 15th, which is Monday coming, to ensure that you're registered. For those children, young persons as well, you have the opportunity now to ensure that your name is on the list, because, like when they say, if you don't have a ticket, you don't have a chance. If your name is not on the list, you would not be able to vote and be a part of the change that the country needs to better it. So I want to encourage all our viewers to ensure that everyone around you is on the list. So when it comes to going to the next regional and general elections, that you will be able to go and allow your voices to be heard. With that said, I want to thank our viewers for watching today, and be sure to join us next week, same time, 12:30 to 1:30 on Channel 6 and all our social media platforms. Do have an awesome day.
I can't take it no more. I can't take it no more. It is time for all of Guyana to unite under one banner and rally against the high cost of living. It's tearing our families apart. Enough is enough. Come rally with the APNU plus AFC coalition at the Burnham Basketball Court, Middle and Carmichael Streets, Georgetown, on Saturday, January 20th, starting at 5 p.m. Come and hear the leader of the opposition, Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament, as he addresses the nation. Come and hear the AFC leader, Kamraj Ramjatan, all the members of Parliament, members of the private sector, and members of civil society. Yes, Guyanese, it's time to send a message to the incompetent and corrupt PPP. It is time for the people to stand against the high cost of living. Saturday, January 20th at 5 p.m. at Burnham Court, Middle and Carmichael Streets, Georgetown. Come out and let your voices be heard. I can't take it no more.